Hello, and welcome to Calm and Cozy Stories, a place where everyone can find calm and enchantment beneath the soft glow of the moon, right before drifting off to sleep. Tonight, we invite you on another journey through a captivating story, one that helps cultivate a sense of peace and relaxation. Before we begin, let's take a moment to gently prepare our bodies and minds for a soothing, restorative rest. Make yourself comfortable, and with each slow inhale and long exhale, allow the cares of the day to gradually slip away. It's not always simple to detach from the day's busyness, especially when bedtime approaches. But keep in mind, the less we worry about falling asleep, the easier it is for the mind to release tension. Let the steady rhythm of your breathing carry off any remaining worries, and let the story you're about to hear guide you into deep relaxation. Now, settle in and allow the moonlit atmosphere to softly embrace you. Enjoy this story, and may you drift into peaceful, restful slumber here on Calm and Cozy Stories. In the frigid and enchanting northern lands, there lived a gentle woodcutter, a widower who cherished his lovely daughter, Daria. She filled his days with happiness, yet as time passed, he yearned for companionship once more. Understanding her father's desire, Daria welcomed her new stepmother and stepsister, Maria, hoping to find friendship in their company. Alas, the peace in their woodland home was fleeting. The harsh stepmother, consumed by jealousy over Daria's beauty that outshone Maria's, grew bitter. Despite Daria's best efforts to be kind and helpful, she found herself on the receiving end of constant criticism. Fortunately for Daria, she had a steadfast friend in Victor, a large dog gifted to her by her father. Though he bore a wolf-like appearance, Victor was gentle-hearted and devoted to Daria. One day, as her father prepared to embark on a journey to trade wood for supplies, she bid him farewell with Victor loyally by her side, feeling a sense of dread at the thought of his absence. As her father rode away into the distance, her stepmother and stepsister seemed indifferent to his departure. The day unfolded like any other. Each person busied themselves with their chores while exchanging few words. Yet beneath the surface, Daria's stepmother was quietly plotting to take advantage of her husband's absence, with a scheme to rid herself of Daria once and for all. As dusk began to settle over the forest, and the early winter sun dipped low in the sky, Daria found herself lost in a book in her cozy sleeping loft. The peaceful atmosphere was abruptly interrupted by a commotion coming from the kitchen below. Curious about the disturbance, she hurried downstairs. The front door swung wide open, allowing the biting cold air to sweep through their home. Her stepmother appeared flustered and anxious as she wrung her hands together. "Daria," she cried out in distress, "the wind blew the door open and your dog Victor has run away." Realizing that Victor was indeed missing, usually curled up by the warmth of the stove, Daria felt a pang of worry. Without hesitation, she wrapped herself in her woolen shawl and rushed outside, calling for Victor's name into the crisp air. She searched every nook and cranny of their little homestead, but found no sign of him. Returning to the front door, she asked her stepmother if she had seen which direction he had gone. With a sly gesture towards the path that wound deep into the woods, her stepmother suggested deceitfully, "Hurry now, you might still catch him." Without taking a moment to put on warmer clothing, Daria dashed down the path, her heart set on finding Victor and bringing him back to the safety of their home. As she vanished into the shadows, her stepmother closed the door, sharing a knowing smile with Maria. They opened the pantry door to find Victor comfortably nestled inside, happily finishing a stack of pancakes, completely unaware of Daria's frantic calls. Delighted by their clever trick, Maria and her mother chuckled while Victor, noticing Daria's absence, sniffed curiously at the front door. They settled in to savor the remaining pancakes from the oven. Meanwhile, deep within the woods, Daria tirelessly searched for Victor. Lost in her thoughts and oblivious to the darkening sky, she pressed on, not considering that Victor, a sturdy northern dog, could likely find his way home on his own. Perhaps it would have been wiser to wait until morning. At the very least, she could have grabbed a heavier coat. Yet who could fault her for her urgent need to find her best friend? She comforted herself with thoughts that if she just rounded the next bend, or called out a little louder, Victor would come bounding back to her. In this way, she wandered too far. By the time she recognized that she was lost and far from home, night had enveloped the forest. Soon enough, Daria found herself trudging through the dim twilight, over gnarled roots, around large boulders, and beneath drooping branches, all while calling out for Victor. Deep down, however, she feared he was nowhere nearby. As darkness thickened around her, it became clear that seeking shelter and waiting until dawn would be her best option. Eventually, she stumbled upon a small clearing surrounded by tightly packed evergreen trees. Slipping beneath their drooping branches for protection from the cold wind, she wrapped her shawl more snugly around herself. This makeshift refuge offered some respite from the chill as moonlight filtered through the trees and illuminated her surroundings. It wasn't perfect, but it would have to do, she told herself as she leaned against a sturdy trunk and began to drift off. Suddenly, something strange happened. The air around her turned sharply cold, stirring her from her sleepy haze. Her nose tingled as if touched by an icy breath. Even the forest seemed to whisper secrets in her ear. Turning slightly to look behind her, she felt an inexplicable presence. Or perhaps it was merely a shift in energy. When she faced the clearing again, disbelief washed over her as she spotted a tall figure standing just beyond reach. At first, she couldn't quite make out who the figure was. He waved his arm in a graceful arc, from left to right, and as he did, the air around him sparkled with a magical glow. Tiny, twinkling particles floated gently from his fingertips, carried by the soft breeze. Wherever they landed, on branches or on the ground, a new color blossomed. Vibrant green leaves and grass transformed into a pristine white. It was as if he were a painter, reimagining the forest and breathing new life into it. Entranced, she watched as he finally seemed to notice her presence. Stopping his mysterious movements, he turned to her with evident surprise. Daria found herself utterly speechless. Words escaped her completely. Breaking the silence, he asked kindly, "Goodness, where did you come from?" Daria struggled to respond. She couldn't help but notice how handsome he was. Noticing her silence, he crossed his arms and studied her thoughtfully, pondering an answer himself. Then, shaking his head as if coming to a conclusion, he spoke again. "Well, miss," he said gently, "you can't stay here. I'm about to blanket this entire forest in a deep winter freeze, and it won't be cozy for sleeping." Finally, finding her voice, Daria assured him that she didn't wish to interrupt his work. After all, being lost in the woods again would be far worse than just feeling cold. She certainly didn't want to wander through the darkened trees once more. The man shook his head with skepticism while brushing some stray ice off his trousers. He regarded her for a moment before shrugging in resignation. "All right then, I'll get on with it," he replied. Then, almost apologetically, he added, "I really have so much to accomplish tonight." Daria nodded earnestly and wrapped her shawl tighter around herself, tucking her feet further under her skirt for warmth. Putting on a brave face despite the chill in the air, she said cheerfully, "Good luck. I'll just go back to sleep." The man stepped back into the depths of the clearing, but glanced over his shoulder at her once or twice, as if hesitating before continuing his task. Then he spread his arms wide once more and unleashed a dazzling cascade of winter magic. Under the moonlight, it looked as though diamonds blanketed the forest floor and every surface nearby. However, with this beauty came an unmistakable drop in temperature. Daria was determined to stay brave. Still, it grew very cold around her. Her chin began to tremble as shivers coursed through her body, and soon enough, her teeth began to chatter softly. The tall, striking stranger paused mid-task and turned to gaze at her, then abruptly ceased his work once more. Striding toward Daria, he spoke again. "Miss, it's clear you're not dressed for the winter chill, and I worry this evening's cold is only going to intensify. Perhaps you should head homeward to find a warm fire." Daria's expression fell as she nodded, reluctantly sharing that she had lost her way while searching for her dog and had no idea how to return home. Upon hearing this, the man's demeanor softened into a friendly smile. He bowed deeply and introduced himself. "I am King Frost. I rule over the northern lands, and sometimes even share my wintry touch with those in warmer places." With a playful wink, he added, "People here often take me for granted, but those in the balmy regions find me quite remarkable." Daria smiled back and returned the gesture with a curtsy, introducing herself in turn. Yet even as she displayed her best manners, the Frost King noticed how pale and weary she appeared. Realizing she would need assistance to brave the night in his frosty forest, he motioned for her to follow him. "My sleigh is just ahead," he said kindly. "Inside, you'll find warm blankets and refreshments that will help you feel better. Come along. Let me show you." Feeling grateful for his kindness, Daria trailed a few paces behind him as they crossed the clearing. Her leather shoes sank into the soft snow, and she marveled at how this place had been grassy not long ago. Her attention shifted when she caught sight of a gleaming white sleigh nestled among the towering trees. It was hitched to a magnificent snow-white horse, its silver runners sparkling in the moonlight, a sight so enchanting it seemed almost magical. With a flourish, the Frost King opened the door of the sleigh and bowed elegantly, inviting her inside. Daria approached with caution, but expressed her heartfelt thanks. before settling onto a plush red velvet seat draped with cozy woolen blankets. She eagerly wrapped herself up, trying to warm her face and hands against the cold. Looking up, she watched as King Frost snapped his fingers and summoned a silver tray holding a steaming mug of mulled cider from thin air. With a soft gasp of delight, she accepted the mug from him, and his smile widened. He closed the sleigh door behind him and leaned against it, as if ready for a heart-to-heart. Furrowing his striking brow in concentration, he asked how she had found herself lost so deep in the forest all alone. Taking a sip of the warm cider, Daria began to share the tale of her loyal dog, Victor, who had slipped away from their cottage and vanished into the woods. The Frost King listened intently before prompting her to describe her home. Was it large or small, made of stone or wood, and did it have a garden with a fence or perhaps a chicken coop? Daria painted a picture of their snug wooden house with its sharply sloping roof, gesturing gracefully as she spoke of the intricately carved details around the windows that her father had crafted. She described the yard, which boasted a kitchen garden, a hay shed, and a little barn, all encircled by a charming woven wooden fence. As she brought her home to life in his mind's eye, he couldn't help but smile at her affection for it, and knew exactly where it lay. With a playful wink, he produced a beautifully wrapped box from behind his back and presented it to her. "I have 2 pieces of good news," he said cheerfully. "The first is that these will be the most delectable chocolates you've ever tasted." Feeling her cheeks warm with embarrassment, Daria accepted the box and lifted the lid to admire the exquisite treats inside. The Frost King continued with enthusiasm. "The second piece of good news is that I know where your house is, and I will take you home." Overjoyed, Daria clapped her hands together and let the box rest on her lap. She expressed her heartfelt thanks and then graciously offered him a piece of chocolate. He took one, savoring its flavor for just a moment before settling into the sleigh beside her. Daria had expected him to feel cold to the touch. Instead, he radiated an inexplicable warmth. He was both enchanting and comforting at once. As he urged the horse onward, and the sleigh glided smoothly over the snow, she stole sideways glances at him. Until that evening, winter had always seemed harsh and lonely to her. But meeting the Frost King had transformed that view entirely. Nestling deeper into her cozy seat and enjoying the sensation of their swift journey through the night air, she felt acutely aware of his presence beside her. Her feelings were no longer chilly. They were filled with joy and warmth. Time seemed to slip away from her as the sleigh ride transformed into an enchanting journey through a dreamlike realm. The trees appeared to graciously lift their branches in salute to the Frost King as he passed, while the forest echoed with the gentle sound of countless tinkling bells. The snow and ice he had crafted sparkled like precious jewels, adorning every inch of the landscape with a touch of magic. Nothing complemented this scene better than the luminous moonlight, which cast a soft glow over everything. The Frost King was a delightful companion throughout their adventure. He sang joyful melodies, shared captivating tales of his exploits, and kindly asked about her life as the daughter of a woodcutter. Though she felt her own stories paled in comparison to his remarkable adventures, she opened up about her life, recounting memories of her father, stepmother, and stepsister at their homestead. These stories may have seemed ordinary to her, but she cherished the connection they fostered. The Frost King found her honesty charming and relished every word she spoke. Above all, he appreciated her fondness for the simple joys of life in the challenging northern lands he governed. Eventually, the soothing sound of their sleigh gliding through the snowy forest began to fade as they arrived at her home's yard. Daria felt a twinge of sadness. What had begun as a hesitant outing had blossomed into one of the most extraordinary nights she could ever remember. As they reached their destination, the Frost King swung open the sleigh door and offered his hand to help her out. "Be careful. Mind your step," he said with a warm smile. "It seems someone has covered your entire garden in ice and snow." Daria let out a soft laugh as she prepared to remove the beautiful woolen blanket draped over her shoulders. No, keep it," he urged gently. "Think of it as a gift from me to you." She felt herself blush and nodded in appreciation, to which he added, "It might come in handy during your next nighttime adventure in the woods." As Daria opened her front door, she was greeted by Victor sitting eagerly inside, his tail wagging with excitement. It dawned on her that he must have returned home while she was away, a comforting thought that filled her heart as she buried her face in his soft fur and held him close. Rising slowly and carefully shutting the door behind her, she peeked through the small crack just in time to see the Frost King commanding his magnificent horse onward. Watching him leave her yard, she could have sworn he gave her one last playful wink before disappearing into the night. Daria's stepmother and stepsister put on an elaborate show of welcoming her back, feigning concern as if they had spent the entire night worrying about her. Deep down, however, the stepmother felt quite displeased that Daria had returned at all, and with such a remarkable story to share. She might have dismissed it as a mere figment of imagination, if not for the stunning blanket now in Daria's possession, its exquisite craftsmanship hinting at a significant value. Later that evening, the woodcutter came home and listened to his daughter's tale with a trace of skepticism. Still, his primary emotion was one of relief. The news of Daria's adventures in the forest had weighed heavily on him, and he found it hard to believe that Victor would rush off into the woods so recklessly. With a firm look directed at the dog, he cautioned him to refrain from causing any more distress for his mistress, and insisted that Victor stop begging for pancakes by the stove. Sitting patiently next to the oven, Victor cocked his head and seemed genuinely sorry. Life gradually returned to its familiar rhythm as winter settled in around them. Yet, Daria felt an inner transformation taking place. She found herself drifting into daydreams and contemplating ideas she had never considered before. Before her journey into the woods, she had never imagined a life beyond the simple existence in their cottage. However, her encounter with the Frost King had opened her eyes to wonders she had previously thought impossible. At night, she dreamt of his warm smile and wondered about the enchanting places he might be visiting. She pondered over the marvels unfolding under his majestic command. Several weeks after their meeting, Daria opened the front door one morning, after a heavy snowstorm had blanketed the world outside. To her astonishment, there lay a beautifully wrapped box on the doorstep, adorned with shimmering silver paper and tied with a soft green velvet bow. Carrying the package inside, she unwrapped it carefully, taking care not to tear the exquisite paper. As she lifted the lid, she revealed a magnificent velvet cloak within. Its royal blue fabric was embellished with delicate silver snowflakes that captivated both her stepsister and stepmother. They couldn't help but reach out to touch its luxurious texture. Draping the cloak around herself, Daria leaned in to savor its softness against her cheek, before pulling it close in a tight embrace, overwhelmed with joy. Daria knew the cloak was a special gift from the Frost King. While the cloak itself was enchanting, it was the thought behind it that filled her heart with joy. However, her stepmother was far from pleased with this lavish present. She insisted that Daria stow away the ridiculous cape and concentrate on her chores instead. To make matters worse, she ordered Daria to clear the entire front walkway of snow, a particularly cruel task, given the biting cold and lack of urgency. Nevertheless, Daria's cheerful spirit remained unbroken. She put on her old coat and set about her work, moving almost as if in a dream. The Frost King had returned to her life. As winter lingered on, days and nights drifted by quietly. The harsh northern landscape offered little in terms of company for the woodcutter and his family. Despite this solitude, he found satisfaction in his home and labor, while Daria kept her heart buoyed by dreams of possibly seeing the Frost King again. In contrast, the envy and discontent of her stepmother and stepsister grew ever stronger. The tension reached new heights after a heavy snowfall, when yet another unexpected gift arrived for Daria. At dawn, with snowdrifts enveloping their cottage, she opened the door to find a second present, wrapped in gleaming gold paper, adorned with a white ribbon. Carrying this exquisite package inside, Daria carefully unwrapped it once more in front of her family. Her father watched from his cozy spot by the stove, while her stepsister and stepmother leaned forward in eager anticipation. Inside the box lay an exquisite pair of boots, the softest, most finely crafted footwear any of them had ever seen, adorned with intricate embroidery and lined with warm wool. They were truly a sight to behold. Daria slipped off one sock and eased her foot into one of the beautiful boots, reveling in its luxurious comfort. They fit her as if they had been made just for her. Caught up in her delight, she didn't notice her stepmother's growing irritation until it became too much to bear. "Well," she exclaimed sharply, "Maria, my dear daughter, you must go into the forest. Uncover what marvelous gifts your stepsister receives from this King Frost she has met. Let him come to your aid as well, and you shall be blessed with many more splendid treasures." Maria gazed at her mother in astonishment. Surely, her mother couldn't possibly mean to send her out into the frigid air on such a pointless errand. Yet, her cunning stepmother was unwavering in her decision. She ordered the woodcutter to take Maria into the woods without a coat and leave her there. Despite Daria and her father's pleas to change her mind, the stepmother remained resolute. Later that afternoon, with great reluctance, he loaded his stepdaughter onto his sled and ventured into the forest, unsure of where exactly to leave her. As he prepared to depart, he offered her his coat, assuring her that he wouldn't be gone long, and advising her to stay safe until morning. Maria turned down his gesture, declaring that his coat smelled like a horse, and that she would soon be graced with gifts from the Frost King. Unable to alter her stubbornness, the sorrowful man shook his head and made his way back home. Meanwhile, Maria found herself in a forest clearing, stamping her feet and clapping her hands together, eager for a visit from the Frost King. She adopted a most pitiful tone and called out for help. Alas, no grand winter figure appeared. All she managed to do was scare away any nearby creatures. As twilight descended, frustration began to bubble within her. Where was her promised rescuer with his delightful gifts and warm drinks? Why hadn't he come for her as he had for Daria? No amount of fussing seemed capable of summoning him, and soon tears of self-pity streamed down her cheeks as she huddled beneath a protective pine bough. Just as she contemplated making the journey homeward, she heard the jingle of harness bells drawing near. To her astonishment, an elegant white sleigh emerged, drawn by a magnificent white horse, and there sat none other than the Frost King himself. She was certain of it. He was more stunning than she could have ever imagined, every bit as handsome as Daria had described, and then some. Determined not to be overlooked, Maria dashed into the path of his sleigh, ready to play the role of a damsel in distress. The Frost King halted his horse and regarded her with curiosity. "What brings you out here alone in this winter wonderland?" he inquired with an arched eyebrow. With a charming smile that she hoped was captivating, Maria danced lightly from one foot to the other, explaining how she had lost her way and was feeling terribly cold. "Could you possibly help me?" she asked sweetly. The Frost King paused to consider her words, gazing up at the sky as if weighing her request. "I have much work to attend to in the woods tonight," he replied thoughtfully. "But you may accompany me for a while, and once I'm done, I will ensure you return home safely." Unfazed by the thought of interrupting his duties, she eagerly tugged at the door of his sleigh, signaling her desire to climb aboard. With a flick of his wrist, the door swung open, though he did so with a hint of reluctance. Disappointed not to be treated like a lady of high status, Maria seized the opportunity to board. She wrapped herself snugly in the luxurious blanket that lay within, secretly hoping it would come home with her. After all, this was where Daria's exquisite woolen wrap had originated. As their journey began, Maria cleared her throat with an air of importance. The Frost King halted the horse and turned toward her with a patient gaze. Sensing something amiss, she asked with a sugary sweetness, "Might you offer me some refreshment?" A look of realization crossed the Frost King's face, as if he had just uncovered her true nature. With a playful grin, he produced a simple cup of hot water and a slice of bread. He handed them to her on a plate and encouraged her to enjoy the meal. Maria felt quite discontented. This was not the treatment she had envisioned. Had she ventured into the frigid woods only to be treated as an everyday person? Certainly not. As the sleigh continued its journey, she cleared her throat again. "How long will your tasks take?" she asked petulantly. "I'm feeling rather cold and would prefer to return home." The Frost King didn't even spare her a glance. Instead, he replied calmly, "Ah, yes, young miss. I've just realized that taking you home is my foremost priority, since I suspect we won't relish each other's company for much longer." Then, with a hint of irony in his tone, he added, "I believe I know the way to your house." Maria was taken aback by his nonchalant response and felt a wave of disappointment wash over her. As he swiftly turned the sleigh and sped toward the cottage, she sank deeper under the blanket in a sulky mood. Her mother would surely be displeased when she returned home empty-handed. The Frost King graciously escorted Maria back to the cottage, yet without any formal goodbyes, he disappeared from the yard before she could even turn the doorknob. As Maria stepped inside, only her stepfather and Daria seemed relieved by her return. Her mother, however, felt a twinge of disappointment that her encounter with the Frost King had been so fleeting. This sense of letdown grew when she realized Maria had returned empty-handed, with not even the blanket from the sleigh remaining as a token. Meanwhile, Daria exhaled in relief. She was glad her sister was home safe from the icy woods, but secretly pleased that the Frost King had not shown her sister the same favor. Daria treasured the memories of their conversations and the gifts he had bestowed upon her. She couldn't bring herself to believe that he showered every lost girl in the forest with such treasures. Life at their homestead resumed its usual winter rhythm. The storms had quieted down, and spring seemed just around the corner. Yet this year, Daria's heart felt heavy as she thought about winter's end. It meant no more visits from the Frost King, leaving her with an unexpected sense of emptiness. But Daria was soon to receive a delightful surprise. After weeks of warming weather, April brought an unforeseen change. One morning, the family awoke to find a thick blanket of snow covering everything outside. Frost adorned the windows, and sunlight sparkled across the landscape, like diamonds scattered on white silk. Eager for another surprise, Daria opened the front door and gasped at what lay before her. A beautifully wrapped box resting on the snow-covered step. The box was draped in soft purple fabric and tied with a shimmering silver ribbon. To her astonishment, she spotted the Frost King standing a short distance away, beaming with delight beside his sleigh hidden among the trees. He appeared even more striking than she remembered, his entire form glistening in the late winter sun like a celestial being. Breaking through her moment of wonder, he gestured towards the box and cheerfully said, "Open it." Standing in awe at her doorway, Daria carefully untied the ribbon and lifted the lid, releasing a joyful gasp as she beheld what lay within, a magnificent diamond tiara. Never before had she seen a diamond, let alone such an exquisite crown. All she could do was cover her mouth in sheer amazement. As she looked up at the Frost King, disbelief washed over her, and she shook her head, unsure about accepting such a lavish gift. After all, what could the daughter of a woodcutter possibly do with a diamond crown? The Frost King stepped closer, making his way through the snow to her doorstep. With a heavy heart, he confessed that he had fallen for a beautiful girl he had encountered in the forest, and no longer wished to govern the winter solitude. With a gentle bow and his hand placed over his heart, he asked Daria to become his wife and the beloved queen of snow and ice. For a brief moment, she gazed in astonishment at the exquisite tiara, glimmering brilliantly in the sunlight. Yet deep down, Daria understood that she would accept. It was evident that this was her fate, and joy filled her heart as she realized that the Frost King was her perfect counterpart in every way. Daria and the king exchanged their vows in a simple yet elegant ceremony, held at his ice palace within the eternal winter realm. Of course, Victor was there too, bursting with happiness as only a dog can be. Not only did their royal pet indulge in pancakes at every meal, but he also felt perfectly at home in the frosty palace, thanks to his thick fur coat. Though Daria was accustomed to warmth and sunshine, she occasionally ventured to milder climates, bringing with her a refreshing breeze of coolness. So next time you feel that crisp autumn air or delight in a chilly summer rain shower, remember that she is nearby, and know that when the moment is right, she and the Frost King will reunite once more, restoring the magic of a winter wonderland.